And we should be live, and with me I have Contrapoints, but I hear you also go by Natalie.
That's right, yeah.
I hope my fan isn't too loud. It's so really hot over here.
I can't hear it, so you should be good.
So, Contrapoints, I noticed that your name Contra is Spanish for against. Was that deliberate or?
Yeah, this is a name I chose like a few years ago before my channel was what it is now. And that was one of the things that I chose it for. So contrary means against. So it would be kind of like points against, or like the word contrary or contrarian. I guess I was a little more edgy back then, but I probably would choose a different name now. But yeah, that is why I chose the name.
Hablas español?
Un poco, but not very much.
Yeah. So, how far along are you in your transition, if you want to talk about that?
Well, I just did a live stream where I talked about a lot of these things. Basically, I am now at 2 months on hormones. So I started on August 2nd. So it's October 3rd today. So that's 2 months and a day. So I'm pretty early on, but I haven't made like a YouTube video really specifically about this apart from the live streams. But once I have some more accumulated experience, is definitely something that I'll probably be talking about on YouTube.
Yeah, you have really come along. Like, like I've seen your earlier videos, and I look at you now, and there is a great difference. You really have come a long way.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, in those early videos, I was like, I had not figured out a lot of things, and I was identified as a cross-dresser back then. I just kind of I didn't have a whole lot of deep insight into myself, I think. So those videos, I was just tweeting about those old videos now because it's kind of painful for me to watch them. Not necessarily because I'm like embarrassed about how I used to be, but just because it's frustrating to watch me seem to not be able to recognize what to me now is obvious. But
Yeah.
I had to figure it out myself.
I think I saw you in an old video with Dark Matter 2525 called Atheists Go to Heaven. That was
That's
you, right?
possible, yes. So I had a previous YouTube existence as a kind of very minor YouTube atheist. And so I do know dark matter from back then.
Yeah, because I do recognize you from Dark Matter's video, and it's just how much changes you've made. It's really incredible. So, how many languages do you speak? Because like one of the most interesting things about your videos, like I remember watching an alt-right video of yours, and you were speaking a little bit of Japanese, and you were speaking some German.
Yeah, so I speak really, I'm really only fluent in English. I can speak a little bit of German, and I'm rapidly getting worse at it because I don't practice it. But when I was in school, I took German because I was doing philosophy. So you need to learn to read German at least to do philosophy, the kind of philosophy I was doing anyway. So that's why I learned it. But yeah, I can speak a bit of German. The Japanese and the Chinese that I speak in a couple of videos, I don't speak those languages really at all. I just got other people who could to train me to speak, to just pronounce the languages. So I didn't actually compose those bits myself. I don't speak Japanese or Chinese.
Yeah, I do speak, a little bit of Japanese, but it is, a really difficult language. Like
Yeah.
I've been studying Spanish for a less time, but I'm further along.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, it's much easier. I took some Spanish in high school, and so I know a little bit, not a lot, but yeah, Japanese, it's probably, I would like to learn it because it's a cool language and it gets you access to a lot of internet culture kinds of things, which would be useful for me, but it is probably more of a commitment than I have the ability to put in.
Yeah, I mean, there's the spoken language, which is really fast. Then there's the written language, especially the kanji.
Yes,
And then there's,
three alphabets and all that.
yeah, and if you pronounce, you got to control your pitch when saying words, because if you don't control your pitch when saying words, you could be saying a different word like commie God, commie hair, commie paper are all supposed to be pronounced in a different pitch. We're still commie, but one way you go commie or commie or commie, and then it's like it's all going to be like 3 different words, you know.
Yeah, Chinese is even worse in terms of them being contingent on tones. Like apparently I can't even really do it right. I had someone help me with that Chinese in that one video, training with me with a pitch a lot. I thought I got it, but apparently I'm still not very good. But you can tell I'm at least trying, so.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, so you say that the problem, like at least in one of your recent videos, you said that the problem with social justice is that people don't view social justice as cool, and you showed what people call Trigglypuff and Big Red. Do you want to go into details about that?
Yeah, so I think that especially on YouTube, but probably in society beyond YouTube as well, there's this idea that's been popularized of like the SJW, or social justice warrior, as this very emotional person who's sort of not in control of themselves. And I think that I don't really necessarily blame the left for this, because I think that a lot of this stereotype is the creation of people who are trying to create a negative image of social justice warriors. So I think on YouTube, you know, the Big Red and Trigglypuff, these are just like 30-second clips that have just been played again and again and again, sort of creating this really inflating a tiny thing into something much larger than it actually is, you know, creating this monster from this one random person shouting on the street, you know. So but I do think that when it comes to like conducting yourself in public, and you're doing, you know, this kind of activism, for example, it does, you know, you have to think about style as well as substance, unfortunately, because people will be attracted to ideas if they're sort of packaged in a way that draws them in. So this is something I think about when I make my YouTube videos, not just like, are the arguments I'm making good? I do care about that, but I also care about how am I, like, what kind of voice do I have as like a host of this show, you know? Like, am I just lecturing people, or am I getting angry and shouting at people? Or am I kind of like pulling the audience toward me and like inviting them into seeing things my way? And I try to be always doing that. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be cool in that sense, but it's just, I find that if you want to spread your ideas, the best way to do it is to present them in a way that people find sort of attractive somehow.
Yeah, your videos are very interesting, and the anti-feminist community wasn't able to bury your videos with downvotes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're very few feminists that managed to stay afloat.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that is what happened at first. The first 2 videos that are on my channel now, those videos did initially get pretty buried with downvotes by the anti-feminist response. But I kind of adjusted my style a little bit. I stopped calling out particular big anti-SJW YouTubers and saying how bad of people they were, because I realized that was a problem. And then also I just kind of picked up some of the style choices that I made were made intentionally to make my videos more difficult to make that kind of snarky response video to. Because a lot of those times, a lot of what YouTube anti-feminists will do when they're responding to like a feminist, for example, is they kind of cut the video they're responding to into these like 1-sentence bites. They play, you know, feminists talking for 7 seconds, then they say something making fun of them, then they play another 7 seconds, and they say a snarky response. Well, I intentionally kind of make my videos more difficult to do that with, because there's a lot of like jokes, a lot of music, a lot of characters, and a lot of, you know, so I think that someone trying to do that kind of response to me, I don't always pull this off, but what I'm going for is basically the effect is they can't really respond to it without me still looking better than them because they, you know, my video, I try to make videos that look good, that sound good, that are entertaining, and that are sort of, it's going to be a challenge to kind of cut that up and make a snarky response. I mean, then people have still done that, because some of my videos are more straightforward, like videos like what is gender or what is race, where I'm kind of talking about in a more just like flat, informative kind of way. Those videos people can make that kind of response to, but a lot of my videos, they really can't do it effectively. And I think that's one of the reasons why I haven't been so buried in dislikes.
Yeah, because I mean, it is hard to do a video response to a comedian. It's kind of hard to do a
Yeah.
response to a joke or a character without feeling silly or pulling it off very well.
Yeah.
But don't you think that Trigglypuff or Big Red went too far? Like, for example, Christina Hoff Sommers is a feminist herself, and Christina Hoff Sommers is really, really nice. Like, she vaguely or loosely agree with some of the things anti-feminists have to say, but you know, it's really, really loosely. She wants to empower feminism. She wants to strengthen feminism. I would view Christina Hoff Sommers to actually be rather similar in thinking to the ranting feminists. Like, you criticize it, but only because she wants to improve it and see it stronger and grow. And yet, you know, one of the nicest, friendliest people out there, Shirley Poacher, starts yelling and screaming, keep your hate speech out of this campus, keep your hate speech out of this campus. And then people like look and it's like, wow, I mean, this person is nice. And if you waited patiently to the end, she would have been more than happy to respond to any criticisms. Or it's kind of a lot like men were trying to have a men's rights meeting, and then Big Red just starts yelling and screaming, being mean and having a nasty attitude. You can see this other guy trying to be nice, trying to be friendly, just to be shut down, or for her to pull the fire alarm down and cheer that on. Or there's like a police barricade, and they're just trying to run through the police barricade. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, seeing you, well, not you, but seeing feminists being mean to people who are viewed as nice, friendly, willing to listen, willing to perhaps hear you out, seeing that level of thuggery. I would say that that hurts feminism.
So I definitely agree that when it comes to if you're a feminist and you're deciding how you personally are going to act, yeah, you should not, you're basically failing if you're throwing a tantrum and screaming, or if you are getting really angry at people on the street and shouting. Like, it's basically I find it that this tends to happen when people get really emotional, and they sort of lose their composure. Now, so I agree that, of course, yeah, acting like Big Red or acting like Trigglypuff in those short little clips, it's very counterproductive. So I agree with that. But I also think that these clips have been used by a lot of anti-feminists. They're kind of played over and over and over again. And they kind of, the effect of that, or the consequences, people are playing these clips and they're saying, this is what feminism is. Like, they're using like Trigglypuff or Big Red as kind of like the mascots of feminism. And that's not very charitable, it seems to me. It would be, they're not really engaging with a feminist who is in a moment of calm and rationality. So I think that, yes, I do in principle agree with you that no, but Trigglypuff, the people acting like that are not doing any good. But I also think that obsessively focusing on them, as a lot of anti-feminists have done, also helps nothing and is counterproductive.
But I also think that many people in the anti-feminist community have tried and made an effort with feminists with little success. Fortunately for me, I'm able to get along with Christiosity. I'm able to get along with Micaiah B. I'm able to get along with ranting feminists and whatnot. But then there have been feminists who don't know anything about me and just call me garbage on legs, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, it's like, you know, there have been times where, you know, I was new. I didn't really hear of the anti-feminist community. I didn't really know what it's about. And then I tried engaging with feminists, and I just got treated terribly to the point where it's like, well, I'm going to hang out with the anti-feminists because they're a lot nicer.
Yeah, so this is definitely something that I agree with you that what you're describing is a real problem that a lot of people on the left or feminists have in general, where we are kind of like, as a group, like I try my best not to be like this, but as a group, we tend to be very hostile to people who aren't already in the group. Whereas people on the other side of this, the anti-feminists, the, you know, even the alt-right and so on, they tend to be much more inviting towards people who are sort of in the middle. And that, I think, is a real problem for feminism and for the left, is that our outreach is bad, that we have a tendency to become this clique that just, if people are already on board, like, we just, you know, people default to calling them racist and sexist and berating them, essentially, right? Which is, I guess, an understandable emotional reaction in some situations, but which is really not helpful, and it doesn't win any it doesn't win anyone over. It pushes people away. And so I think that it's worth making the effort for people on our side to really try to think harder about how we appear to people who are on the outside. And it's something that I try to think about a lot.
Yeah, like I do find the feminist community to be ultimately self-destructive and self-sabotaging, that nobody really has to destroy you. You are doing a good job destroying destroying your own selves, because again, you know, some people don't like listen to like Bering and automatically believes everything he says. Sometimes people do go try to talk to you, try to have a conversation just to be called racist, sexist, misogynist, whatnot. There's Bering is telling the truth. They really are like that. Like, wow, Bering was right. Everything he said about you was correct. And like, no, but I'm glad you brought this up. I am glad you brought this up, because I have seen this from like Peter Coffin, and I've also seen this all over Twitter, particularly from feminists, and that is giving centrists a really hard time. Like, you know, it's kind of like making it clear that, you know, it's kind of like, I think Peter Coffin says that a centrist is like Nazis, but only on the weekends, or sort of kind of Nazis. And it's like, you know nothing about centricism before complaining about it. What a centrist is, it's a person who is like, for example, this is only a sample, but it's a person who is for capitalism, but they probably think there should be a trigger warning on a book. They have both right-leaning views and left leaning views. They probably want, you know, like a wall, but they probably want to ease for it to be easier for people to get a visa, you know. They have some sort of combination of left-wing views and right-wing views, and how that messes up, you know, depends on the individual. But it's really like they listen to the left side, like they listen to like Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and they like some of the ideas from them. Then they listen to like Ben Shapiro and Ron Paul, and listen to this from them, and they pick and choose which ideas what they like from each side. That's a centrist. And I had to get with my friends and make, you know, do a live stream debunking, a lot of the things that centrists get told, like if this was, World War II, you would be, saying, you say Hitler has the right to free speech and whatnot, and you would be Hitler's puppets, or, or if this was like the Civil War, you would want compromise. When really that is not understanding centricism. It's kind of a lot like, it's not being on the fence or being indecisive. It's having ideas that you like from different sides. That's all it is.
Yeah, so one of the reasons, I mean, I have been very harsh on centrists at times, and I think that especially it happens when it comes to centrists being really eager to come to the defense of this speech of fascists, for example, especially when they're not also as interested in defending other people's speech, or also, a criticism of centrists that I've made a lot of is that they tend to give, someone like a racist like Richard Spencer, a centrist like roaming, or a conservative like roaming millennial, will give him a platform to very, to kind of say his ideology without very much criticism. But I think that it's true that some people on the left stop making distinctions between the centrists and Nazis, and they get to the point where they're saying that the centrists are Nazis, or people are saying Dave Rubin is a Nazi, or whatever it is. And that, I think, is really bad. One, because it's false, right? They're not Nazis. And so if you want to understand the situation, you have to understand that they're not Nazis. And two, that it's kind of bad PR for the left, because what ends up happening is then, like, a lot, Dave Rubin, for example, he dismisses a lot of the more nuanced criticism of him, or just ignores it. But when someone calls him a Nazi, he just retweets it, and then it's like, look at these ridiculous people calling me Nazis. And it's like, yeah, they do kind of look ridiculous, because he's clearly not a Nazi. Like, I have a lot of disagreements with him, but his being a Nazi isn't the problem. So yeah, I do wish people would be more careful when it comes to using words like that in a more cautious way.
Yeah, I think you brought up something like this with Sargon of Akkad. I saw you and Sargon
Yeah.
debating, and you said something along the lines of, well, Richard Spencer lies to attract more people into his group. He's not going to say, well, we will be violent if necessary, we will do this. He lies about his views to be more attractive, and how when it comes to Christopher Hitchens was more prepared, and he had all of these newspapers where newspapers saying, where this guy contradicts himself, and it's like, well, we really do want a race war, and we really do want to hurt Black people. And even like Creationist Cat did like his own video on this, proving that Richard Spencer is a liar, and that even though he's saying one thing to roaming millennials office, he said a different thing in an article. And not only that, but for me, roaming millennial did give a very softball interview, and she gave him like really, really solved questions, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's like, it was like a real interview. It's the kind of interview that the DNC would give Hillary Clinton.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that was exactly what my criticism of that interview was. Like, it's not that I think that no one should ever interview him. It's that I think if you do, you have to be kind of savvy about it and understand that what he's feeding you is a way of representing himself that's designed to be attractive to centrists, but is not really his real agenda. And how do I know that? Well, just from looking at the stuff he says elsewhere. So yeah, you have to come into that kind of thing prepared, and you have to, as you say, take the more Christopher Hitchens approach, and you cannot be interviewing Richard Spencer like, as you say, the DNC interviews Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, and it's hard to understand what to do about people like Richard Spencer. Edgy Sphinx was the same way, where
Yeah.
Edgy Sphinx, lied to the anti-feminist community. He deceived them. He pretended to be their friends. He said, "I'm all right, but I'm nothing like this. I'm nothing like that." Oh, no, 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 no. I am absolutely nothing like this. But then, like elsewhere, he says no, no, that he's trying to like brainwash them to being part of the alt-right, and he's going to try to, it's like, oh, I think I could get Carlton T to come onto our side, or I'm really sure I could get this person, and oh, I could convert that person. And these people have no problem using lies, manipulation, deceit, trickery. Not everybody desires to express themselves honestly. And I think that that's the flaw that the anti-feminists didn't get at the time. They probably learned their lesson by then, but not everybody is out to express themselves honestly. Some groups are really focused on attracting as many members as possible, and they know that they can't attract people by being honest. So they're more than willing to be dishonest to get as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think that Edgy Sphinx turned out to be a really, I mean, obviously, I'm not happy that he got so big on YouTube, but I think that he turned out to be kind of an educational experience for a lot of people because they kind of saw firsthand the way that this sort of alt-right or fascist recruitment works, which is, he found a community of people that he thought might be a little sympathetic to it, and he kind of joined them and just little by little attempted to kind of lead them into this direction of like the white ethno state idea. You start from something like build a wall or, let's limit immigration. And once people get on board with that, you can kind of try to nudge them and see if you can take these feelings that they already have and kind of amplify them or kind of direct them in this more sinister direction. And that's exactly what he did. And it's exactly what I think, someone like Richard Spencer has been trying to do. Although they kind of messed up, I think, with Charlottesville. They went a little too far. They showed too much. And obviously someone got killed. So they, I think, sabotaged themselves with that. But they'll be back. So we have to keep an eye out.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. When it comes to like Richard Spencer and the alt-rights. Now I remember when you were interviewing Sargon, saying something like black people need to stay married
Yeah.
and keep black fathers in their life, and you were saying something like black people were disempowered because of slavery and segregation, and how's he gonna keep black fathers in the lives of people? Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so that argument basically, Sargon's trying to explain the racial inequality in America because of, he says, problems with the black family. And I mean, I'm willing to believe that, okay, that probably contributes something if there's an unstable, people have disproportionately unstable households. But also, why do they have unstable households? Isn't it partially because of this history of housing discrimination and because of the over policing of those populations and long mass incarceration and things that are very disruptive to families, and then that produces kind of a feedback loop. So it's not that I'm saying it's not that Sargon was trying to say that I'm just making excuses. I'm just saying that it's all white people's fault. That's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying, because obviously as an individual, you have to take control of your life and somehow, however, whatever way you can. And no, you can't just blame racism or forever. But that doesn't mean that at the level of society, there aren't these inequalities, and that makes it harder for some individuals more than others. So it's not, I think that he just doesn't want to talk about that inequality at all. And I wanted to make him talk about it.
Yeah, what I like is something, I'm not sure if it should still be going on, but the idea of giving black people scholarships to go to
Yeah.
college, and You know, like if you give a Black person a scholarship, they could go to a good school. But there have been problems that I myself have seen firsthand. Now, for me, I went to a predominantly white school, but I was an intern at a predominantly Black school, and I noticed a huge difference. And in this Black school that I was an intern for, like I was working in the as a clerk, or I was serving the psychologist out, so I was basically doing a lot of paperwork. They were learning in the 8th grade in this all Black school what I've already learned in like the 2nd grade in a predominantly white school. So my mind was like blown. And then like their literacy rates, they're like teenagers, you know, like they're in the 8th grade, but their literacy rate was so low, and only one kid made all A's.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I think is obviously part of the problem too, is that, I mean, so why do you think that is, I guess, is the question.
I mean, I don't know. I heard many theories. I've heard that it was the No Child Left Behind policy. You know, the psychologists who worked there said that the kids had to take a lot of days off school because they had to be with okay, it's like their daddy's in jail, or their dad got killed by the cops, and their mom is like on cocaine or whatever, or she's a single parent trying to do too much by herself, and the kid has to step up. The kid is both a kid and an adult at the same time. The kid has to take care of their little brother, a little sister, something that their parents should do, but they are forced to step up and take care of their little brother, their little sister. So they take out many days off school, and that impacts their literacy rate. And it doesn't help that their parents themselves are illiterate. And it just seems like a cycle that doesn't really end. And to a certain extent, the Mexicans go through a somewhat similar experience when, you know, their family is out there in the fields, you know, picking fruits, you know, doing that job that nobody wants, picking fruits in the heats, and then they have to help out their family because that would be more money. So they end up missing lots of days in school. So they had to take remedial courses to keep up with the white kids, you know.
Yeah.
And it really, really sucks because it just seems like a cycle that never ends. And it would be really difficult to put Black people into colleges that way. It seems like what would be a good idea is that to have some way for people to turn their lives around. Like if there was like some sort of charity or organization that's like, we will help you read for free, you know, like for people who could afford it, you know, like obviously if you don't have the money or the time, obviously probably individuals can't, but for the people who have the time and for people who have the money to be a lot like, you know what, we would help you read, and we will help you read for free. Come here and we would help you get your life in order.
Yeah, I think that that kind of program is definitely needed. And also just like funding is an issue with a lot of these schools too, because the way even public schools are funded, a lot of the funds for especially like extracurricular things like, you know, after school activities and stuff that keeps kids busy, like the funding comes from the local communities themselves. So a community where the parents are wealthier has more, the school has more money than the communities where the parents aren't wealthy. So that, yeah, is part of the problem too. So I agree that more funding for schools, more programs that help. I mean, like you say, when you have situations where the families are so poor that kids are having to take days off school to work, and then they're, you know, they're falling behind, or situations where, right, kids are like being parents for their younger siblings, they don't have time for school, and it's like, yeah, what needs to happen is either, well, a few things maybe. You know, one is like fix some of the problems with the policing and penal system that lead to men in jail for with such long sentences for nonviolent crimes. I mean, that's one thing I would change, and also just you know, funding and funding for families and for schools, and so to keep kids in school so that they don't have to be taking days off work to days off school to work, or they don't have to be raising their own siblings.
You know what? I really like the idea of prison reform. You know, I would like, instead of going going to jail to be punished, to go to jail to reform. And that's the system that they have in Norway. And Norway has one of the lowest recidivism rates in the world. Now, sure, when it comes to major crimes like rape or murder, sure, I believe that they should get punished, because that is something that we should all know is wrong. But there are some crimes out there that are really, really quite minor, kind of like if a person steals, say, $2 can of beer, or if a person is hungry and they're starving and they steal something because they feel like they are going to starve to death. Or, I mean, it's kind of like we can't treat all crime the same. And like with some crime, like you've stolen something because you're hungry, how about some community service, or to clean up the place that you robbed from? Like you've stolen beer because you're thirsty or whatever. Why not mop the place and clean the place up for the owners? That's, and avoid jail time, because now you've exchanged the beer for labor, you know. Or, you know, it's kind of a lot like, you know, if you get like a speeding ticket, it's like on an empty road. It's still like, you know, it's like, well, you got a speeding ticket on an empty road. Like, we cops are really, you know, helping us now, and like, wow. And, you know, it's like, can't they just, you know, do some community service, like pick up pick up trash just on the side of the road, and just do that, and all is forgiven, instead of, you know, having all of these people thrown in jail for really, really small, minor things that nobody really cares about. Pretty much everybody has done, like pretty much everybody's run a red light, pretty much everybody speed. You know, it's kind of like, should we really, you know, punish people for things that everybody pretty much already done anyway? I mean, instead, I just think that there are other alternatives, like, you know, picking up trash from the road or something like that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think that in cases like where like petty theft or like minor drug offenses and things, like oftentimes like what really is needed is like some like job training or something, right? Rehabilitation, like you said, and give, you know, if the system were to help them have a future and to help them get employment after that, that would fix the problem. Instead, you send them back out into the world, this time with a criminal record, making it even harder for them to get a job, which means they're going to end up selling drugs or stealing again. So yeah, I completely agree that the way we have it now does create a cycle where things never get better.
Yeah, exactly. Because the moment you get out of jail, you are viewed as a criminal,
Right.
and absolutely nobody wants to hire you. When really, I really think that there's a problem with the American mindsets, where it's kind of like, we must punish you and you're the scum of the earth, rather than the Norwegian mindsets of, you know, you are a person who've fallen on unfortunate circumstances. You're going to be here to be fixed. You know, we're going to like have you do like license plates or whatever. You'll be earning an income while in prison. You would have your own money. So, because it's like, you know, usually when you're in jail, you're not earning any money, but it would be nice if people could just do license plates or whatnot and earn money like while in jail, and, you know, be able to come out of jail learning a lesson and being a better person. And not only that, but Norway has proved that it worked. I mean, they have the lowest recidivism rates in the world, and our punitive prisons don't really work because we have the highest recidivism rates in the world.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that our system as it is just creates lifelong criminals who can never, I mean, who are in a situation where when they're out of prison, right, you have to always disclose whether you're convicted of a crime on every job application. And that makes them, much harder for them to get a job. And so their situation is only going to get worse. So yeah, I completely agree with that. Unfortunately, one problem here is there's so many political obstacles to it. And part of that has to do with the kind of vilification of poor people, and specifically of poor people of color, right? There's this attitude about that, I mean, you can go out to Hillary Clinton talking about super predators or whatever, but just the idea, like, just there's not a lot of sympathy or understanding for the situation that you're describing. So that, I think, is a big obstacle. And if people were better informed about what the problems of our system are, and informed about the way that perfectly non-violent offenders are made, their lives are made incredibly difficult, and then it makes things hard for their children, and it gets people trapped in these situations. Like, we would be able to politically move, I think, a much more sane and effective penal system. Oh, hold on, you're muted.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think perhaps many people would agree with that. Because I do think that I hear good ideas, some good ideas from the feminist side, and I hear some good ideas from the anti-feminist side. But I feel like the two sides talk past each other
Yeah.
because it's like the two sides are too busy, name calling each other, like this person is a stupid SJW, and this person is a sexist, misogynist shit lord, instead of a lot like having a real dialogue. Because, I mean, one of the things that I have noticed, and Micaiah B has noticed, and whatnot, is that like a feminist and an anti-feminist could say the exact same thing, but it's kind of a lot like people kind of root for their team. So it's kind of a lot like if an anti-feminist says something, you may be angry and mad and whatnot, but if a feminist says the exact same thing, you may be cheerful and happy, and vice versa. Like, even, everybody's guilty of rooting for their own team, and to a certain extent, both sides are guilty of hypocrisy and not really giving the other side a chance, or trying to really listen to each other, because I do think both of you probably want to solve similar problems but have different ideas on how to solve it.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the problem too, is that, well, I guess, some of it is that there's a lot of these big YouTubers are professional YouTubers, and they're kind of making money off this drama machine, which gives them incentive to keep producing this drama content. But also part of that problem is this has been going on so long now that, like, it's not a lot of the fighting. It's not even about ideas anymore, right? It's about people, like, are angry at the other side because they've traded so many they've had so many bad interactions with each other that there's just this loyalty and hostility. And so, right, what you end up getting is not even an argument about ideas anymore, but an argument about all the bad past things whichever person has done, and, like, that becomes an obstacle to getting any kind of actual dialogue to happen.
Yeah, and that is really unfortunate. But I mean, but it also, like, when I saw you debating with Blair White, and Sean Head was there, talking about how she was a huge fan of yours, and seeing a picture of you and Sean Head and Amar Skeptic together, and seeing you talk with Sargon Vakab and willing to have a conversation with him, it did provide some hope, that somebody is actually willing to just try to have a civil respectful conversation and try to move the conversation along, because the conversation seems to be largely stagnant, where it's just insults back and forth now. Like now, all I
Yeah.
really get is just insults instead of any meaningful things to say.
Yeah, I mean, I try to really make an effort at least to be willing to have those civil conversations with people. So even with like, I mean, Sargon, I disagree with a lot of. I think he's done a lot of bad stuff in the past. But when he invited me to be on his podcast, I said, you know what, I'm going to look past it. I'm going to do it anyway, because if for no other reason, I think it's helpful to the general situation that we're all in for people to see that it's possible for two people to talk. And, it helps also. I think part of the problem when you refuse to talk to the other side is they sort of stop seeing you as a person. You just become this kind of caricature or something, this like cartoon cutout of a person. And if you actually go onto their channel, you talk to them face to face, like you feel more human to each other in a way that you wouldn't if it was just like insults on Twitter. So I think that um, I don't know how helpful it is to me. I found I think it's somewhat helpful. And I also find that it's a way for me to reach people I wouldn't otherwise reach. I mean, in the case of talking to Sargon or Blair, yeah, their core audience doesn't want anything to do with me and is not going to be interested. But a lot of people watch their videos who are not just their inner circle of fans, like there's a lot of people kind of drifting through, like you described, maybe people who think they sort of agree with some feminist things and some anti-feminist things. And those are really the people that I'm trying to reach when I'm doing that, is to show them that, like, yeah, I am willing to talk to the other side. And also, like, look, I exist and I have ideas too. So, yeah, I'm glad that you think that is a hopeful sign, because I want it to be a hopeful sign.
Yeah, when I just saw like you talking to Blair White and you seemed to have a good time, you were all smiles and seeing you talk to Sargon and whatnot, it filled me with so much hope. Like, yes, it almost makes me think of Pandora's box where all of these bad things are happening, but then there's this sign of hope and it's like, yay, because I mean, like even though ranting feminist is a feminist, I agree with her on some things, and I agree with Micaiah B on some things. I agree with you on some things. I agree with the Sargon and Stick Sexenhammer on some things.
Yeah. Well, I think that probably I mean, maybe even most of the people watching these videos are probably like that. Um, and I think that YouTube creators kind of forget that, because as a YouTuber, you end up kind of surrounded by an inner circle of close fans who just like sort of dote on everything you say. But yeah, it's good to remember that even if on YouTube, all the creators seem to be strictly divided between one side or the other, a lot of the audience is not. And that's why I think it sometimes can seem pointless. A lot of people think it seems pointless to go debate Sargon or whatever, because they're like, well, I'm not going to convince Sargon. It's like, yeah, the point isn't really to convince Sargon. Like, that's not why you're doing it. The point is to represent your viewpoint to anyone who's watching the conversation.
Yeah, and in many ways, again, I feel like in many ways the feminist community shoot themselves in the foot. Like it seems like Christy Winters was trying to like shut down Sargon of Akkad speaking at MythCon, and I think like Steve Shives was also involved in sending letters to MidCon, and the MidCon then turned around, went on Barron's channel and talked about how they had to spend an extra $3,000, which could have ruined them. And the atheist community is still small. Like atheists make up like 10% of Americans. So like for atheists, life is still hard. There are still atheists are afraid to come out, atheists who are still afraid to say that they're atheists, and it's kind of like to say that it's a Nazi event and try to prevent Sargon from going. It's just it just like from the outside looking in, it just seems like people pay too much attention to Sargon. It's kind of like he's just a human. Let him go. Like, just move on.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that what you're saying about how the way it looks to from the outside perspective is important, because I think to some of these people they've been interacting with Sargon so often and so long that you're right, they're too concerned about Sargon. And to the outsider, yeah, it looks obsessive and like really vindictive. Um, and it's not a good look. Like it's not worth it.
Yeah, there have been people who went to Christy Winter's page in the list of her videos, and they created a song based off how many times she mentioned Sargon or Bering. It's like Sargon, Sargon, Bering, Sargon, Bering, Bering,
Yeah.
Sargon, and going through a list. Not that, but there's this other guy who follows me on Twitter, and he gave me showed me how many times like Christy Winters mentioned, like Sargon, Bering, and whatnot, like the people she mentions most. And like this was before Sargon got suspended, and she mentioned Sargon of Akkad and Bering, the top two names she mentions on Twitter the all-time most. And what you don't, what she just to get is how things look from the outside looking in. You know, from the outside looking in, it looks creepy, it looks scary, it looks disturbing, and it's like the left really should pay attention to how it comes across to outsiders. Like really, really, really think, you know, how you look like from the outside looking in. Like there's this one guy, he talked to me, he left me a nasty comments on one of my videos. So like I went to his channel to see what he makes videos about, and pretty much every single video he ever made was all about Sargon. And I thought, wow, all your videos are about Sargon. And it's like, whoa, like whoa, you just need to get over him, because from the outside looking in, I mean, you probably don't see it if you're you, but to an outsider, it looks like you need to move on and to just, you know, to just go, I'm not going to think about Sargon. I'm going to watch a movie instead of thinking about Sargon. I'm going to go hiking instead of thinking about Sargon. I'm just going to not think about Sargon at all.
Yeah, so it seems to be an easy trap to fall into, because a lot of people, I think on all sides of this, tend to get somewhat obsessed with hating one person. And so I mean, with anti-feminism, it was Anita Sarkeesian, who everyone was obsessed with for a long time, or sometimes Riley Dennis, everyone kind of obsessively hates and makes video after video about her. But and you're right, and a lot of people on the SJW or feminist side are talking about Sargon and Bering way more than they should be talking about Sargon and Bering. I totally agree with that. And it's a trap that I have felt myself sort of starting to fall into with like for a while I was just talking about Blair White too much, and I realized like I'm not going to be the person who is obsessively making a video about this person again and again and again. Like it's like you said, is you have to look at yourself and say, time to move on. Like I've said enough about this person for a while. Like I need a break, because I agree. It's not a healthy, it's just not a healthy pattern to get into when you're so fixated on one like villainous person.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. I do think both feminists and anti-feminists do a good job at seeing the problems of the other side, but they have a hard time looking at their own problems, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's kind of a lot like, yeah, the anti-feminists talk about Anita Sarkeesian a bit much, and they do talk about Riley Dennis a bit much. And, you know, it's kind of a lot like, yeah, right-wing feminists, they pointed out like, wow, you talk about, you know, those two people so much, but, you know, then we're complaining about, people talking about, Sargon too much. So both sides are guilty of this, you know. Mm.
Yeah. I think it seems to just be something that happens when people make videos like this on the internet. So I should say I have to go now in a couple of minutes because I'm going to go meet someone for dinner. But I thought this was a good chat. Hopefully you think so too.
Oh yeah, I've had a lot of fun, and I. It seems like we both have a lot in common. In fact, I think you're 28 years old.
Yes,
I'm also 28 years old. We
that
were
must be what it is.
yeah, it was really nice talking to you. It was a very pleasant chat, and I hope we could do this again.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me on. This was fun.
Yeah, and I hope you enjoy your dinner.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.